Welcome everyone to this Pearson English webinar. Thank you for joining us today. You can join the conversation online with the hashtag #ReadyForWebinars. Please remember this session is recorded and the recording will be made available via our YouTube channel after the event. Also, every participant will receive a certificate of attendance. Please submit any questions you have in the chat box and we will answer these at the end of the session. I'm excited to hand over to Dan, who is going to tell us about overcoming anxiety in speaking exams. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlie. Can everybody hear me okay? If you can hear me okay, please say hello in the chat box. Excellent. So thank you for joining me this morning. I'm not sure, or this afternoon, I'm not sure whereabouts you all are, but I'm calling today from Barcelona in Spain. Okay, so if everyone could just say hello and mention where they are watching from this morning, that would be great. So as Charlie mentioned, my name is Dan Shepherd. I've been a teacher trainer, and an academic manager for around 10 years. I'm also a trainer for the Pearson and BBC live classes, which is a really cool project that we've been working on. So check that out if you teach teenagers. And I'm also a Cambridge speaking examiner and team leader. Okay, and I've probably examined hundreds and hundreds of students over the years, and I've noticed there's one thing which always happens every session, without doubt, is that students are underachieving because they're nervous, because they get overwhelmed and they're not getting the marks which they deserve. Okay, and I think this is a problem because this is often something which we don't always focus on in class, and we prepare students for everything else. We teach them grammar and vocabulary, maybe we work on their pronunciation, but we never really prepare them for how to deal with nerves and anxiety. Okay, so that's my plan for today's session. We're going to start by looking at the reasons why people get nervous. And we're also going to then look at some more practical ways that we can help them prepare before an exam. And also I'm going to share with you some tactics that students can use during an exam in case they do suffer from anxiety or from nerves. Okay. Great to see so many people from so many countries. Thank you. Someone from Australia even, and Vietnam. Great. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at some typical situations where people feel nervous. We've got public speaking, we've got a job interview, we've got a driving test, taking an exam, and a big sports event. Okay, so thinking about these situations, I want to know, how do you feel in these situations? Okay, obviously you feel nervous, but how does your body react? Okay. Can you type in the comment box how these situations make you feel? Anxious, sweaty, good. You feel anxiety, nervous, sweaty, unease. Okay. Yeah, how does your body react in these situations? Anxious, your heart beats very fast, you're very stressed. Okay. Thank you. So if you see this little pencil sign in the top corner of my screen, that means I want you to type something in the chat box. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, I'm going to just quickly do a quick poll because I want to know which of these situations makes you feel the most nervous. Charlie, can you launch the poll for me? Okay, so what I want you to do, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to vote here. And what I want you to do, is just choose which one makes you feel the most nervous. Okay, so speaking in public, going to a job interview, taking a driving test, doing an exam, or taking part in a sports competition. Okay, so I think you just need to click on it should come up on your screen. And you just need to click submit at the bottom. Okay, all of them, some people. Okay, I'm afraid you can only select one. Okay, thank you. So Charlie, I think that's probably enough time. Could you close that now? Okay, thank you for everybody who participated. Can you also show the results, Charlie? That test of the poll? Okay, so let's have a look. Most people, okay, so we've got 14% said speaking in public. The driving test is probably the job interview, sorry, and the driving test were probably second, and doing an exam. Okay, so we all feel different, nervous in probably most of these situations. Okay, so I think it is normal to feel nervous. It's not necessarily a bad thing. If you feel nervous, it's generally because you care. Okay, and if you care, that means probably you're going to be prepare better, and it's something which you want to do well in. The problem is when we get so nervous that it affects how we respond. Okay, so why do we get nervous? What do you think? So here are some ideas that I came up with. If you have any other ideas, feel free to post them in the comments. So from what I found, I think people, they doubt their own ability. They're afraid of what people will think if they fail, especially in an exam. Sometimes it's the only thing they've been thinking about. So they're so obsessed with this one thing that they can't think about anything else, and it stresses them out. Maybe they feel unprepared. Maybe they're worried about making mistakes or making themselves look silly, especially if they're talking in front of people. And I think one thing that these all have in common is that it kind of is something which is out of your comfort zone. Okay, so it's something which you're not used to doing. Okay, and all of these things, they make us feel anxious. When we get out of our comfort zone, it's a typical reaction which we have, and that's for these reasons here. Okay, so you think doing an exam, one that's kind of a stressful situation. So for students, not only is it taking the exam, but also they're speaking in another language. There's two things which might make them feel anxious. Okay, so it's typical that people are going to struggle when it comes to these exams. Okay. So let's have a very quickly, we're going to look at a little bit of theory. I'm no psychologist, but this is something I found online I thought was interesting. So anxiety is defined as a distress or uneasiness of the mind caused by fear of danger or misfortune. And general anxiety is excessive or exaggerated worry about everyday things. So an unrealistic or out of proportion, constant worry that dominates and interferes with our daily function like work, school, relationships, and social activities. Okay, so it's things which we do every day, but it causes us stress because we're out of comfort zone. So maybe in class, when we speak in English, we're used to our classmates. Then we get into this exam situation, and it gives us this anxiety. Okay, just a quick note: this picture of SpongeBob here. Can everybody hear me? I just see that people are saying my voice is not clear. Okay, hopefully that you can hear me okay.
It went crackly for a moment there, Dan, but we've got you back.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So I was just saying, yeah, these images, some of them were supposed to be GIFs. So you'd have to imagine that this is a picture of SpongeBob hyperventilating, breathing in and out. So this is how some people feel when they're anxious. Okay, so this was from a study from someone called Suleimanova in 2013, and she was also studying foreign language anxiety. Okay, so this is when learners often express feelings of stress, nervousness, or anxiety while learning to speak the target language and claim to have a mental block, okay, against learning. And they found this within university students. This was alarming and estimated that up to half of all language students experience debilitating levels of speaking anxiety. Okay, so that's quite a lot of students. Okay, but I think that's probably from the students that I've examined. That's something which I see often. I would say about half of them do suffer. And while deliberating is quite a strong word, I think it does affect their performance. Okay. So as teachers, what can we do about it? Okay, so there's lots of things we can do both before the exam and during the exam. Okay, so we're going to look at ways that we can help students become familiar with the exam. We're going to do a visualization activity, okay, all together, and I'm going to share some other tips. And then we're going to look at some strategies what they can do during the exam if they're getting stressed or nervous. Okay. Just for the sake of the activities, we're going to focus a lot on the Cambridge exams because one, that's the one I have most experience with, but also I sent out a survey before this webinar, and a lot of you are teaching those exams. Okay, but where I can, I will also mention other exams. Okay, but the idea is that you can apply this information to any exam that you're teaching. Okay, so let's look at familiarisation. So basically, this means your students need to know what to expect. Okay, the more familiar they are with the exam and the exam setting, the more confident they're going to feel. Okay, so we're going to look at some of these in a bit more detail, but just as an overview, they need to know about the different parts of the exam and what they're expected of in those parts of the exam. It's useful that they know. They don't need to know it in detail, but they know what they're being marked, on. It's important that you practice in class. The more you practice, the better. So they can build up some kind of automatic, and they feel more comfortable. You give them feedback on their performance and not just the bad things. You should tell them some things which are good so they can feel more confident about their performance. And you can watch videos and discuss with them, or use Google Glass and watch VR videos. We can record ourselves doing the exams and then listen back, and students can self-evaluate their performance. And we can organise mock exams. We can also try some other tools like the Readiness test or the warm-up app, which are made for the PTE exam. Okay, so we're going to look at these in a little bit more detail now. So first, actually, I want to test you. So for those of you who know the Cambridge exam, how many parts are there in the B2 first certificate? Can you just write in the comments how many parts there are? And for bonus points, what do those exams test? Okay, what's expected of the students in these different parts? If you've never taught this exam before, don't worry, just have a guess and try your best. Okay. So we've got 5, 4, 4, 5. Okay, lots of 4s and 5s. So in the Cambridge B2 first specifically, there are 4 parts to the exam. Okay, and each part of the exam is testing a different kind of skill. Okay, so in part 1 is the interview section. So this is testing the candidate's ability to use social and interactional language. So these are some basic conversation, some questions kind of about people's everyday lives. Okay, this section is also good because it helps students relax because they're easy questions to answer. Okay, part 2 is known as the long term, and this would test candidates' ability to produce an extended piece of discourse. Okay, so this is when they have to show what they can do, and they're given an amount of time. So in this example, it's 1 minute, and they have to compare and contrast 2 photos. My slides, hang on. Okay, part 3 is the collaborative task. So they are working together now with a partner, and they have to engage in a discussion and work towards an outcome. Okay, and then the last part 4, is a discussion. So they now have to engage in a more deeper discussion based on the collaborative task in part 3. Okay, so it's very important that students know what's expected of them and what they need to do in each part. This might sound very simple and basic, but often we get students come to the exam, especially ones who have been living in another country, and they have a very good level of English, but they don't often know what they actually have to do. Okay, and they might even ask the examiner, what do I have to do? Do we have to speak together? And if you don't know what you have to do, that's going to affect your performance. Okay, so this is very important. You go through this before, while you're preparing your students for the exam. Okay. Okay. Second question. Now a bit more detailed. So we know what we're doing in the exam, but I want to know what are the 5 areas that students are assessed on during the exam. So what is the examiner listening out for? Okay. Can you type in the chat box the different things that you think the students are assessed on during the speaking exam? And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to come up with some ideas. So again, this is specifically for the B2 first exam, but they are very similar in across the different exams. Okay, we've got pronunciation, accuracy, vocab, fluency. Okay, grammar, pronunciation, fluency, interaction, pronunciation. Okay, grammar. Okay, so we've got the idea. So specifically in the Cambridge first exam, they are tested on grammar and vocab is the first one. So in this exam, that's actually they're together. Okay. We've got discourse management, which is kind of how well the students organize what they're saying, okay, and their answers. The pronunciation and the interactive communication, which is between the student and their partner or the student and the examiner. Um, and also, we have a fifth mark, which is given by the interlocutor, the person delivering the exam, for global achievement, which is just kind of an overall impression of how well the student managed the communication during the exam. Okay, so why is this important that students know this? For me, they don't need to know it in detail, okay, but it is important for them to know that they're not just assessed on grammar, for example. Lots of students worry they make one grammar mistake that they might fail their exam, okay? Or they might forget one piece of vocabulary and they get really stressed and they get more nervous, okay? So they need to realize that actually they're being marked on lots of different things. So if they do make a small mistake, it's fine. They just continue and also be aware there are other things they're being marked on, okay? Um, for those that are teaching other exams, we've got the okay, sorry. So the B2 First, so you can find out more of this information online. This is from the Cambridge B2 First Handbook. Okay, and it breaks down each of the assessment criteria into the different levels that the students are marked on. So they're given a score from 0 to 5, depending on how they perform. Okay, so like I said, this isn't necessarily something I would give the students, but it's something for you to make them aware of. Okay, it's something for you to refer to when you're giving them feedback or when they're practicing the exam. Okay, so I'd always include this in your preparation. And then here's the marks for the global achievement as well. You can also, if you're teaching other exams, so IELTS, for example, this was from the IELTS website. In IELTS, you can see they're marked on similar things. We have fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. Okay. Similarly, in the PTE General or the Pearson English International Certificate, people are marked on their fluency, interaction range, accuracy, and phonological control. Okay, so we'll see, although each exam has slightly different things, they're all similar. Okay. I will share all these links with you at the end. Okay, so you can have access to these as well. Okay, so another reason why it's good to know to make the students aware of the assessment criteria is for when you're giving them feedback in class. Okay, so an activity I like to do is, well, I always have a kind of a sheet like this. This is actually from the Cambridge website. You can create your own versions, and it's broken down into the different areas that they're marked on. So we've got grammar and vocabulary, discourse, pronunciation, and interactive communication. And then it breaks it down further based on the actual criteria. So in this example, it's focusing on grammar and vocabulary. So does the speaker use simple grammatical forms with control? Okay, we space to make notes for the things they do well and the things they're not so good. Does the speaker use complex grammatical forms? We have good, not so good. Does the speaker use a range of appropriate vocabulary? Good and not so good. Okay, so it helps you direct your feedback and give them information that's relevant, okay, specifically to the mark scheme. So yeah, you can find this online, but you can also you can make your own versions of this. So when we're giving feedback, we need to remember to keep it positive. Don't just talk about the mistakes. Make sure it's relevant and also suggest ways that they can improve their score. Okay. Another thing which is very important is obviously practice. Okay, the more they practice, the more comfortable they're going to be doing the exam. And here are some typical errors that I've noticed during speaking exams, which often happen when students are nervous. Okay, so they run out of things to say. That might be because they're speaking very fast, maybe like I'm doing today. Okay, so I'm a little bit nervous myself, so I'm speaking very fast. This is especially obvious in the long turn or the monologue, where they have to speak for an extended amount of time. Okay, if they run out of things to say and there's an awkward silence, then often they're going to get more nervous. Okay, because nobody likes an awkward silence. Also, when you're nervous, you forget how to say something. So very simple vocabulary, it just goes out of your mind. So we can teach them techniques to describe things in other ways. Sometimes they also use language they've learned in class in a very unnatural way. So they're so focused on using this vocabulary we've taught them. Sometimes they use it and it's not appropriate. So it doesn't necessarily make sense in the context. Another big thing is they don't always answer the question. So they're listening, they're not listening to the examiner, or they're not reading the question properly. And also, if it is an exam they have with a partner, they're not always listening to their partner, and they might say, "I completely agree," and then what they actually say is that they don't agree. Okay, so all of these things might affect their marks, and normally it's because they're quite nervous, or they're not very well prepared. Because we don't have much time today, we're just going to look at one of these areas, and I'm going to share with you an activity that I do with my students. So this is an activity, a quick activity that you can just do at the start or the end of your class, um, which helps your students have the resource to come up with something if they run out of things to say. So, for example, I'm thinking specifically here in the Cambridge exam in the part 2, where they have to compare and contrast a photo for 60 seconds. Quite often they run out in 40 seconds. Okay, so they've got 20 seconds where they need to fill this time, ideally with some good language. So things that you can teach them to say is giving their opinion or giving a reason. So for example, I'd prefer this because, or I'd rather this than this because. If I had to choose one, I definitely go for this because. Okay, and I'm going to show you how this works. I quite often do this. So at the start of a class, before the lesson starts, or while we're waiting for students to arrive, or at the end of the class, when if you've got a few minutes to spare. Okay, and the key here is repetition. The more you do this, the easier they'll be able to recall this language when it comes to the exam. Okay, so what I do is I have the language I want them to use at the top. So a structure, for example, I'd prefer, and then a verb, and 2 images. All they have to do is, with their partner, just say which one they prefer and why. Very quick activity. So I'd prefer to visit the Great Wall of China because I think it's incredible how they built it so many years ago. Okay. I'd prefer to go whitewater rafting because I'm allergic to horses. I don't like them very much. Okay. And then we can change the language. I'd rather have an iPhone because Samsungs aren't as cool. Okay. I'd rather watch a movie at the cinema because the sound and the image quality is better. Okay. You can also make them, depending if you're teaching teens, I like to use kind of funny or maybe shocking images to get them talking a bit more. So if I had to eat one of these, I would choose the worms because I don't like the idea of eating the legs of a cricket. Okay. So again, we're changing the language. And then in the last slide, I usually don't give them any language at all. I just give them some pictures. So now they have to recall the information, recall the language they want to use, and also they have to try and work out what the question might be. So here, for example, it could be, do you prefer to live in a city or the countryside? Or do you prefer to go on holiday in the city or the countryside? So now they have to use some of the language. Oh, if I had to choose, I would live in the city because there are more things to do. Okay. So this is just a quick activity that you can introduce to your class, again, at the start or the end of the lesson. And every week or two you want to try it, you can just use different images. It takes a few minutes and students are practicing their language, okay? And then when it gets to the exam, their mind goes blank. They're going to be able to just come up with, I prefer this one because, or I'd rather do this because, okay? It's a useful kind of filler language that they can always recall on. Another way they can kind of become more familiar with the exam is by watching videos. So again, the example here from of the Cambridge exams, but also if you look online, you'll find speaking exams for the different exams. So watching the video will help them kind of see what it's actually like for the students, and they'll be able to see, oh, okay, so it's going to look like this, I'm going to feel like this, and they can actually see how it works in real life. You can then even take this a step further by watching, if they're available, some 360 videos. This one, for example, if you go into the YouTube video, you can actually move the camera around the exam room. So you can see the examiner, you can see the interlocutor, you can see your partner, and you can start to feel what it might be like to be sitting there in that exam. Okay. You can then take that one step further. Okay, so they can become familiar with it by watching videos. But the problem with that, they don't necessarily feel what it's like to be in the exam. Okay, so one thing you can do is a technique called visualization. This is something which athletes use and people public speaking. So before they attend an event, they think about it in their mind exactly what's going to happen and how they're going to feel and what they're going to see and what they're going to smell. Okay, we're going to try this out today. Okay, so this is an activity I normally do in person. But what we're going to try today is we're going to do it online. So I'm going to need your cooperation here. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is to think of a student. Okay, one of your students, maybe a student that gets very nervous. Okay, so I want you to think of that student and write their name in the comment box. Okay, one student that you're thinking of. And you're going to pretend you are this student. Okay, so we've got Annalisa, very good, Barbara, Vlad, Kate, another Vlad, okay, Oscar, excellent. So we're thinking about one of our real students, okay? So imagine what this student is like. Imagine they're just about to take their speaking exam. Maybe that's IELTS or Cambridge or the PTE or whatever, or TOEFL. And they're very nervous, okay? And you're going to be this student. So before we begin, it's very important that we get ourselves in the right frame of mind, okay? So what I want you to do is take in a long, slow breath through your nose. Fill your lungs first from the bottom and then to the top, okay? So we're going to breathe in. Okay, I want you to hold your breath for a couple of seconds and then breathe out through your lips. Trying to relax your muscles, your shoulders, your face, okay? So we'll do that again. We're going to breathe in. And we're going to breathe out. Okay, so it's very important we get in the right frame of mind. Now what I want you to do is to close your eyes and listen very carefully to what I say. Okay, so close your eyes. Still imagine you're this student, Maria or whoever. Okay, and now I want you to imagine you're sitting outside the exam room. Okay, it's your turn next. How do you feel? What do you see? Who are you talking to? What are you talking about? Okay, the student before you leaves the room. They look very happy. Okay, the exam must have gone well. Good news. Okay, but it's your turn. You stand up. You enter the exam room. Okay, you're feeling very nervous, but the examiners, they welcome you with a smile and they ask you to sit down. What do they look like? How are you feeling now? What are they going to ask you first? How does the exam progress? What goes well? What do you find difficult? What do you wish you'd practiced more? Okay, the time is up, the exam is over, and you're free to go. How do you feel as you walk out the door? How will you celebrate that the exam is finished? Okay, so you can open your eyes now. Okay, you're free. Thank you for those who commented. Well done for those that commented with your eyes closed. That's very good. How did you find that activity? How did you feel? Okay, just I want you to write it in the comments now. How did that activity make you feel? Okay, useful, helpful. How did you feel? Okay, it made you experience it more. Okay, you felt relaxed, you felt positive, you felt nervous, you felt calm, useful, relaxed. Okay, so this is an activity that I started doing recently after attending a workshop about visualization with a colleague. Um, and I've tried this with teenagers and adults. I find that teenagers actually respond better. At first, they're a little bit nervous and they're a bit shy. They feel it's a bit silly. But the more you do it, the more they take it seriously. Okay. So this is a good activity to introduce this idea of thinking about how the exam's going to go, how they're feeling. It's also a great way to open a discussion about what people are nervous about, why they're worried, um, thinking about the different parts of the exam, which part of the exam they're most worried about. So you could lead into an open class conversation about how the students are feeling. Um, you can also use this activity for lots of different things. So I've seen it being used for creative writing, for example. You have to all be a different character and you have to imagine you're in a different place, and that helps students come up with ideas. So there's lots of ways we can use this in class. Um, I've had teachers before who saying, "Oh no, it's not really for me." I was the same. Okay, so I thought, "Oh, this won't work. Students won't like this," but I promise you, it's worth a try. So I think you should try it and see how it goes. Okay, and if it doesn't work, you don't have to do it again. Okay. Um, so I've shared the script here, so I can put that in the document I'll share with you at the end. Um, but you can make your own. You can make your own script as well. So you need to adapt it for the exam they're doing and the situation, okay, in the context. Um, Another way to get the students really feeling like they're taking the exam is by doing a full mock exam, okay? So the important thing is that it's separate from your normal class. Um, at the school where I used to work, we used to do it on a Saturday morning. So the students would come in. It wasn't part of their class. It was something separate. They do the full written exam, and then afterwards they did the speaking exam. And the speaking exam was always with another teacher, who's someone they weren't familiar with, because your students, they're comfortable with you. So when you're doing the exam, they're relaxed, and you're saying, "Ah, there's no problem." As soon as they get in front of a different teacher, they start to get more nervous. Okay, so this is very good practice for the real thing, and it's important that you try to do it as real as possible. So you stick to the test format. You give them their marks based on the assessment criteria. You give lots of feedback, okay, constructive feedback, things that they can actually change before the exam. And like I said, yeah, use another teacher to play the role of the examiner, okay? Another thing you can do if you're preparing students for the PTE is there's a new tool called the Readiness test. And this is a great online tool that you take an online test which includes listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Um, and what you do it all online. It takes around an hour, I think, and it tells you how ready you are for the exam. So it will tell you if you're not ready, you're potentially ready, or you are ready. And the good thing about this is that they can see which parts of the exam they need to work more on, or it gives them a realistic outlook that maybe it's not the right time to take the test. Okay. Um, if it's not time to take the test, then maybe because these exams are expensive, it's better they might wait until they feel more prepared. Okay. Because, like we said, if you feel unprepared, you're not going to be confident in the exam. Okay. I've just seen somebody mention the power pose. That's a great one. I'm going to mention that in a moment, but thanks for reminding me. Okay. Also, for those doing the PTE exam, there's the warm-up app, which you can download on the Pearson English website. And this is, again, it's exam practice that you have in your pocket. So when they're traveling to school or to work, they can just do practice activities to help them feel more accustomed and more used to the type of questions. Another one for those, this is from the University of Cambridge, but this is called Speak and Improve. It's a research project. It's not perfect, but it's a way that students can practice their speaking from the computer, and it gives them feedback on what they're saying. So sometimes the feedback isn't perfect, but it's a good way for them to practice their speaking at home. Thanks for sharing the link there, Charlie. Again, I will share you a document at the end with all these links in it as well. Okay, so other tips. My first kind of tip is talk to them about it. So have this conversation. Students don't necessarily know, they don't realize that everyone else is in the same position. Everybody is nervous. Okay, this is quite ironic, but I'm very nervous right now doing this webinar. Okay, I usually do these type of activities in person with small groups, but today I have 400 people on a computer. Okay, so it's good to know that other people are nervous. You can also recommend students, this is easier said than done, but don't leave everything to the last minute. Thank you, Marion, for your comment. Don't leave everything to the last minute. The more you prepare in advance, the less stressed you're going to be. Try to get an early night. Again, if you're stressing too much at the end, you're not going to sleep very well, and then that's going to affect your performance. A very easy thing as well is to arrive with plenty of time before your exam, okay? If you're going to arrive with 2 minutes to spare, you're going to be stressed and you're going to be running and you're going to be sweating, and that's not a good start to an exam. If your exam is with a partner and you're able to choose your partner, because you're going to be obviously more relaxed, if that's the case. And try to think positively. One of the things somebody in the comments just mentioned is a thing called a power pose. Okay, and I was watching a TED video about this the other day, about how we can make ourselves feel confident before something that's very nervous. So one of these positions is to sit like this. Okay, to lean back, maybe put your feet on top of the table, and this is what's known as a power pose. Okay, so you can suggest to students that they try this before their exam. It's just to spend 5 minutes, sit quietly, sit in a pose that's going to make them feel big and confident. Okay. At the end, I'll share with you a link to a TED talk that's excellent that you can watch with your students. I also asked one of my students as well how she prepares for exams when she's nervous, and her advice was to listen to music. Okay, so she can focus more. So thanks to Arena for her input. Okay, so got about 10 minutes left. So we're now going to think about things we can do during the exam, because obviously it doesn't matter how prepared students are. There will be moments when they'll get to the exam and they're going to feel nervous. Okay. So one thing which I think is very important, which again is not always something you would do in class, is to think about the non-verbal communication. So that's kind of how you present yourself when you arrive to the exam. Okay. Not only will this make you feel good if you have a good non-verbal communication, but it will also make a good impression on the examiner. Okay. So for example, make sure you're smiling, make sure you look interested, like you want to be in the exam. Make sure you have a good posture, you sit up straight, okay, you're looking interested. You make eye contact with the examiner and with your partner, okay? And another big one is to use your hands. In the exam, students always, when they're nervous, they touch things, they touch their hair, maybe they're touching their face, they're touching their watch, they're playing with a pen, they're doing anything they can to help them reduce their nerves. And sometimes that's not a good thing, it distracts them. So tell them to use the hand to help them feel a bit more confident. Okay. As we can see in this picture, these people, they don't look very interested about their interview or their exam. Okay, so that's not going to help them with their performance. Except maybe the man on the left, who he's got a bit of a power pose going here. So maybe out of all of them, he's going to feel the most confident in his exam or his interview. Okay. Another thing students can do, and this is something you can definitely practice in class when you're doing a mock exam or the practice papers, is to give them techniques or tactics that they can do if their mind goes blank. Okay, because this does happen a lot. And you sometimes need to give your brain a bit more time to think. Okay, this happens when you're doing things in your own language, but it happens even more when it's thank you, Margot. Yeah, tell them not to sit like this during the exam. Okay, before the exam, because if not, the examiners probably will get a bad impression. So if they go blank, you need to give them ways that they can give themselves more time to think. Okay, because thinking in another language is already difficult. So one thing is to use filler words or phrases. So it's to say things like, "Oh, that's a good question," or "Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Let me think." Oh, things like that. Okay, just give yourself a little bit more time. You can also teach them alternative ways to say something. So if you forget a piece of vocabulary, you describe what it does instead. Okay, if you forget one piece of vocabulary in an exam, you're not going to fail. Okay, but what will happen is if you forget something and your mind goes blank, you'll become more and more stressed and you'll get more nervous. Okay, so it's not a huge problem. If you forget the word, I don't know, bucket, okay? It's a picture and you're describing a picture and there's a bucket in the picture. You don't remember the word, you just say the thing we use to put water, okay? That's good enough for the examiner, okay? And also you won't kind of stop where you are. Another thing you can do is ask the examiner to repeat the question. As long as that doesn't happen a lot, I think it's a good thing. If you didn't quite hear them or you're just not quite sure what to say, just ask, "Oh, sorry, could you repeat the question?" And the examiner will repeat the question. You'll have an extra 10 or 15 seconds to think. Another thing you can do in an exam where you have a partner, there's a communicative activity, is shift the focus to them. Okay, so I'm thinking specifically about the Cambridge exam where they have the collaborative task. You can offer your partner to start first. Okay. Oh, would you like to start? And then it gives you a bit more time to think. Okay. And if that doesn't work, okay, and this does sometimes happen, students do kind of completely lose it. Just stop and breathe. Again, like we did for the visualization, just take a deep breath and breathe out. Okay. Just stop and then take time, take 5-10 seconds, and then continue. Okay. You're not going to fail the exam because you have a little pause. Okay. The important thing is you continue and you don't just completely lose it and walk out the exam or you start crying. Okay. The important thing is stop, take a moment to regain your composure, and then you continue with the exam. Okay. Remember, this was a gift, so the girl, she's kind of looking very calm. Okay. Okay, we're nearly finished. Here are some of the resources I've mentioned and some further reading. I've got them in a document. So let me find the link for you and I'll share it with you. One moment. Okay. So in the comment. Okay, try that. So that's a Google document. Hopefully you should all be able to access it, and it just has all these links in it. Okay, so you're able to read a bit more. I've also added the TED video I mentioned. Okay, final reminders before we look at some questions. Okay, nerves aren't always bad. Okay, nerves are normal. Everybody gets nervous. Okay, the thing is that we talk about it and we find ways to deal with it so it doesn't become a problem. Okay. Second, generally examiners, we're nice people. Okay, we're not. People imagine these examiners, they're scary and they're old and they don't like students, but it's not true. Okay, the examiners are listening for what students can do. okay, not what they can't do. Okay, so let your students know that. Focus on the positives and don't panic if you make one mistake with a piece of grammar. Okay. Also, in many speaking exams, maybe not all of them, but in a lot of speaking exams, marks are given on the performance of the whole exam and not of the individual parts. Okay. So if you mess up part 1 or part 2, forget about it and just continue and just keep doing your best. Okay. And then after the exam, you can relax like my frog here. Okay. And you can just take a breath and forget about it. Okay. Once the exam is finished, the exam is finished. There's not much you can do about it. So just try to relax in time for your results. Okay. Right. So this is what I want to know from you. What are you going to try in your next class to help students prepare for a speaking exam? Okay. So maybe maybe you're teaching online at the moment. Maybe you're still teaching face-to-face, but these are things that we can do online as well. But at some point, students are going to be taking their exams again. So what things are you going to try with your students? Okay, breathing, visualization, breathing. Okay, lots of people want to try the visualization. That's excellent. The mock test, the power pose. Okay, excellent. Also, feel free to share any other kind of ideas you have in the chat so other people can learn. Okay, so it's important we learn from everybody. You do a mock exam. Excellent, Hannah. Okay, we're going to do breathing and visualization. We're going to relax. Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, the key is, I find when we go to these webinars and things, is that we do something afterwards. We don't just forget about them. So, right, I want you to go into the exam, into your class next week or tomorrow, and to try something new. Okay. Right, we've got a couple minutes left one more slide. Couple of minutes left for any questions. Charlie, do we have any questions?
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for that session. It was invigorating and inspiring. And
thank you. Sorry, I had to move a little bit fast.
No, not at all. No, you were spot on. I just wish that I had this knowledge before I went into my French or German speaking exams when I was 15 or 16. I would have been much, much more comfortable doing them. Thanks for sharing that with all of us. So we haven't actually had any questions here, which is always a good sign. It means that you've answered absolutely everything. But
we're listening.
If you do have any questions, please submit them. I've pinned the document with all the relevant links at the top of the chat box. So you can also... Sorry, go on.
I've also included my link to my LinkedIn profile. So if you have any questions or you have any doubts, you can always send me a message on there. Okay.
Thanks for that. Steve, you asked whether we have any relevant titles. I haven't managed to get a response on that yet. But if we can, I'll send you directly some links for that. Look, Dan, you got lots of great comments. People have really appreciated this. But
thank you very much, everybody, for joining.
Absolutely. We haven't had any questions come in, guys. So last minute or two, but we've got a full schedule of webinars running at the moment. We've got a full day today and tomorrow. They are the last 2 days of a 6-day webinar series. There are more webinars this afternoon and later on this morning on wellness, well-being for your students. I'm just going to share the schedule URL in the chat box now.
There's also one tomorrow specifically about building confidence for students preparing for the PTE exam. So if anybody's preparing students for the PTE exam, look out for that session. That's tomorrow. I can't remember what time though.
So Elvis, you're asking, can we have some content for primary students? Yes, we are hosting some sessions around teaching primary students. So again, check out the schedule. And if you've missed any of the sessions, you can catch up on the YouTube playlist online, which we're updating as the sessions go on. Brilliant. So Dan, thank you so much for delivering.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you to everybody for joining. And thank you very much for all your comments, especially I know it's quite early in the morning for some of you. So thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Brilliant. A quick note, certificates of attendance will be sent out and the recordings will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So just search for Pearson English on YouTube. And also look out for the goodie bag, which has got a whole raft of information and useful links for you all to learn more. Thanks for coming, and I hope to see you at another Pearson English webinar very soon. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.